Ambereen Sheikh was born on the 22nd of January 1985. She was raised in Pakistan. Those who knew Ambereen described her as being intelligent, bright, and ambitious. She is someone who would light up a room. She had undertaken further education in Pakistan and worked as a teacher. Now in this story, there's many suspects, so let me go through them one by one so you don't get confused, as I certainly did. Khalid Sheikh at the time was 47 years old. He is Ambereen's father-in-law. Shabnam Sheikh is Khalid's wife. She had lived in the UK for over 30 years. She is Ambereen's mother-in-law. Asghar Sheikh, who was 22 at the time of this crime, he is Ambereen's husband. He's the son of Khalid and Shabnam. Shagufa Sheikh was 21 at the time of the crime. She's the sister of Asghar and Ambereen's sister-in-law. And Shagufa has an IQ of 68, which was the equivalent to a child at the age of 10. This IQ score placed her at the bottom 2% of the population. Wow. Sakalain Sheikh was 16 at the time of the crime. He is the brother of Shagufa. Okay, that's everyone. You'll remember all of that, right? So, Ambereen eventually married Asghar. It was an arranged marriage. Ambereen herself was 7 years older than Asghar. Initially, it had been proposed between the families that Ambereen's brother was to marry Asghar's sister, Shagufa that is, but this arrangement became undone. It's unknown if this caused any rifts between the families, but you can see how this could have caused friction between all parties involved. Ambereen was 29 when she came to the UK in November 2014 to live with her husband and his family at 15 Clara Street in Huddersfield. But within a few months of Ambereen's arrival in the country, her new family were expressing dissatisfaction with her. This disapproval emerged in conversations between Shabnam and her cousin Nahila. Shabnam complained that Ambereen was not doing her chores. She was not cooking the rotis and not looking after her husband. There were complaints about Ambereen's personal hygiene from Asghar. Apparently, Ambereen was not keeping herself clean and she was not taking showers. Khalid, the father-in-law, told the cousin that he would send Ambereen back to Pakistan, but that his wife Shabnam did not want this to happen. Nahila, the cousin, was told that Asghar and Ambereen had a fight and that Ambereen was sleeping in Shagufa's room. During one of these chats between Shabnam and the cousin, Shabnam counseled Nahila against an arranged marriage for her daughter, telling her that, well, I forced my son Asghar into a marriage, this only led to problems, so don't do it to your kids. Well, of course you muppet, if you force someone into anything, there may be problems. Furthermore, Ambereen had no independent source of income. She was reliant upon her father-in-law for pocket money. She very rarely went outside, and when she did, she never went out on her own. In fact, her passport was found by police in Shagufa's bedroom. Ambereen spoke only a little broken English, and it's easy to see how she became isolated and dependent upon her husband's family. And by these circumstances, she was quite vulnerable. And you gotta ask, if she's 7 years older, why are they getting someone married to someone that much older, right? It's a matter of economics. Her family in Pakistan found a guy in England who's willing to marry her. They are better off if she comes to England and then she can send money back to Pakistan so they can live a better life. You get it? By July the 11th, 2015, the family members were preventing Ambereen to have a contact with her relatives. One of the relatives, called Raima Zahir, she was concerned for Ambereen's welfare. She went to visit her with her brother. On arrival, the door was opened by Shabnam, who said various things. First she said, "Oh, Ambereen is not in." Then she said, "Oh, Ambereen doesn't live here." And then she said, "Oh no, you're not able to see her." Silly cow, which one is it? Asghar emerged from the back of the house and challenged both Raima and her brother. It's reported that Asghar threatened them both and chased them out the house, making it clear that they should not come back. Raima and her brother were worried and went to the police station to express concern over Ambereen. Now the police did go and visit the house 2 days later, but to them Ambereen appeared quite fit and well. I mean, she only spoke broken English and no real conversation took place. Her father-in-law was just outside of the door listening in to the conversation. But of course, in such circumstances, Ambereen would not have been able to express any concerns or fears she had. So, that's the background of the family. Let me get into the crime. Months later, in the early hours of the 1st of August 2015, Shagufa called for an ambulance claiming her sister-in-law could not breathe properly. When paramedics arrived, they found Ambereen lying unconscious on the bed. Ambereen was admitted to hospital by ambulance in an unconscious state. She suffered a catastrophic brain injury. Ambereen, to this day, has never recovered consciousness. Over the weeks and months which followed her admission to hospital, her condition was assessed by many different doctors, but they all came to the same conclusion, that even though she currently can breathe independently, she was deeply unconscious with no awareness of her environment. She has no motor response and no response to painful stimuli. Her condition is permanent and she is in a persistent vegetative state. There is no prospect of any recovery. And although her remaining brain activity is sufficient to allow her to breathe and her digestive systems to function, she will only survive by artificial support. Her life expectation is uncertain, but she will eventually die as a consequence of her ongoing condition. The doctors concluded that Ambereen's brain injury was caused by the administration of the drug glamipiride. This is a drug which is used for the treatment of diabetes, and this drug was present in their house, and it was prescribed for the mother-in-law, Shabnam. So there's two conclusions. Number one, she took this drug on purpose, Ambereen that is, not knowing what it is, or number two, someone gave it to her knowing what would happen, because of course, she was not a diabetic. You see, if this drug was taken someone without diabetes, the drug is dangerous, even in small quantities. Ambereen does not have diabetes. When she took the pill, her blood glucose level dropped, causing brain injury due to the glucose deprivation. The medical evidence showed that Ambereen had suffered the brain injury a few days before her admission to hospital. During that time, she lay unconscious and untended. She was unable to protect her airway, causing a lung infection and possible further brain injury. In other words, she was like this for 2 to 3 days before they even called the ambulance. When Ambereen's body was examined following her admission to hospital, she was found to have suffered a large chemical sting which extended over the lower back. This was inflicted by someone putting caustic soda in hot water then on her skin. And for those that don't know, caustic soda is sodium hydroxide. So if it comes in contact with your skin, it can be painful. Dr. Nigel Cooper, who looked at her, found this to be concerning. He was unable to see what had caused it, saying that he had not seen anything like it before. There was also a caustic mark on Ambereen's upper back. It was large and would have been very painful for Ambereen. So 1, she was given this pill, and 2, she was tortured. The family would have all been aware of her pain and distress, but none of them took any steps to protect her by taking her to the doctors or to the hospital, or trying to prevent further incidents to her by whoever had inflicted this on her. Now, regarding the diabetic pills, it's unclear which of them tricked Ambereen into taking glamipiride, but whoever did so intended to cause Ambereen harm. She would have lost consciousness shortly after taking the drug and remained in this deeply unconscious state. She would have been unable to eat or drink, and when entering the hospital, she was found to be very dehydrated and appeared malnourished. She had urine stains on her clothes and it stained her bed linen and left a bad odor in the bedroom where she was lying. She was also vomiting excessively. As she was vomiting in her mouth, she was sucking it back in because she was panicking. This started to cause a lung infection before she was unconscious. But what of the family members? They were all living together in a house that wasn't that big. They must have spoken to each other about Ambereen. They all knew how they treated her. They all knew she wasn't well. They all saw the symptoms she was displaying. Not only did they know that she was seriously ill, but they also knew why she was in that condition. In fact, Shagufa let slip in her conversation with ambulance that Ambereen's blood sugar had been checked, and although she was not a diabetic, her sugars had been low but were then normal. That's a bit weird. I mean, I don't have diabetes. I don't think I've ever done a sugar check. Who does a random sugar check? Unless, of course, they knew. You get what I'm saying? Nobody took any steps to help her, and it's clear that the reason for not doing so, it's because they knew that if they did, then Ambereen's history of abuse over previous days would emerge. They only sought medical care when Ambereen started making odd noises and they thought she might die. Before calling the emergency services, they all agreed to cover up what had taken place. I mean, before the ambulance came, they cleaned her body, Ambereen's body. They moved the body into another bedroom to try and rid this urine smell. They also changed her pajamas, and then her dirty clothes, they threw it in the trash. They then hid the stained mattress in one of the downstairs bedrooms. Many of the lies started with a telephone call to the emergency services, which was made by Shagufa. Askar and Sakailan were both present when the call was made. Shagufa told the emergency services that Ambereen had been ill over the previous 2 days and she'd not eaten. She told the ambulance that she had taken 1 or 2 paracetamol. Paracetamol is essentially Tylenol. But of course, they all knew this wasn't the case. They were lying to the emergency services. But also the paramedics thought, hold on a minute, you've just told us she was unresponsive since about midnight. It was around 4 or 5 a.m. when they got to the house. So they asked them, this 4-5 hour period, what the hell were you doing? Why did it take you so long? And of course, because these idiots are stupid, they didn't realize when they told them midnight that this was too much of a gap and had to be explained. So they said, oh no, it was 1 a.m, maybe 2 a.m, she fell unconscious. Muppets. They also told the paramedics that Ambereen had been suffering from headaches during the previous 3 days and that she had spent the previous day in bed. The lies also continued at the hospital, where Askar, in the presence of Shabnam and Shagufa, told Dr. Timothy Jones, he was the doctor specializing in intensive care, that for the past few days Ambereen had been eating little and going to bed with headaches. He also denied knowing anything about the caustic burns and said that he could think for no reason why she would have any of these injuries. When they were all taken to the police station and quizzed by the investigators, none of them said anything. They all refused to reveal what happened. They all said, I don't know what happened, I can't talk about it. In fact, Askar said, I love my wife, why would I hurt her? One of the police officers told the media, this has been an awful case in which a young and healthy woman has been catastrophically injured and robbed of her future by the very people that should have protected her. So, right now, she currently survives by being fed through a tube. At some point, she will die, but not for many years. To summarize why this happened, Ambereen did not meet the family's expectations, so they force-fed her pills and tortured her body in retaliation. Askar, his father Khalid, and his mother Shabnam were jailed for 7 years. Askar's brother, Sakailan, was given a 6-month sentence, which was suspended for 2 years. And his sister Shagufa was given an 18-month sentence, also suspended for 2 years. Now, let's get this straight. The reason why they did this to her, because they looked at her as lower than them. They're from Pakistan, they came from poverty, like my family did. They came to England, they did okay. The girl came over, right? She was seen as someone in lower status, lower class than them, even though she was older, right? So they expected her to cook, clean, and all that stuff. But because of this status that she had with them, they didn't even see her as human. So they treated her the way they did. The reason why I bring this up is because I came across another case that I wanted to share with you. And I'm going to explain this case to you fully on why it happened. I'm Pakistani myself, and I kind of understand the culture a little bit and how people act. And this story will tie in to the story I just told you about Ambereen. Status, power, control. Sana Ali was 17 when she married Sahir Ali. Sahir himself lived in the Manchester area in North England. They got married in Pakistan in an arranged marriage. Sana moved to England shortly after, but then she soon learned who Sahir really was. Sana told her mother she was feeling lonely because her husband was staying out late. Sana told her that she was lonely and disappointed. But you know what her mother said? Her mother said, "You're mentally immature, so he likes you. Just live with it. He will get better." Now let me ask you this. If your daughter came to you and said, "Look, my husband is not treating me right," what are you going to do? You might go to the husband and say, "Look, sort your shit out," right? The mother may have thought, well, she's only 17, she's young. No. The reason why the mother said just ignore what he does and stay with him is because it would look bad on her. Oh, your daughter's divorced. You understand what I'm saying? Now, Sahir himself was having an affair with Harmohinder for nearly 2 years. Harmohinder, at the time, was a student in Birmingham. When Sahir married Sana in Pakistan, he told Harmohinder that he was on pilgrimage to Saudi. This was his way of explaining why he was going away for a few weeks. Now, let me explain this to you, right? Only a Pakistani man can explain this, right? He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. Is that the right way to say that? I don't know. But you know what I'm trying to say. He wanted the girl at home who's going to raise his kids, be obedient to God, right? Serve him, while he also was going out and having his fun too. You understand? So the way he could explain to his girlfriend that he was going to be gone for 2, 3, or 4 weeks, oh, I'm Muslim, I'm going to go to Saudi, I'm going to, do the pilgrimage. When in reality, he was going to get married. Now, Sahir said that both he and Harmohinder ended the relationship at various times, but it always continued. He said she would cry, swear, and raise her voice as he tried to explain that their relationship was doomed. The biggest problem was he's Muslim and she is Sikh, and neither family was going to let them get married. Sahir, who was a mobile phone salesman, said that Harmohinder would arrive unannounced at his office and talk on the telephone and send text messages until the early hours. He said she would not sleep until he called her. At times, we both may have fallen asleep on the phone due to tiredness. It was starting to stress me out and I dreaded it. She would continually persist. When Sahir told her he got married, she begged him to divorce Sana. So then what did he do? He said, you know what, Harmohinder, why don't you become my second wife? She said, haha, hell no. But then Harmohinder found out Sana was pregnant, and it hurt her even more that Sahir was happy about this. Their relationship broke down after that. So, in an act of jealousy, Harmohinder decided to confront Sana directly. Sana was 11 weeks pregnant at the time. On May the 11th, 2007, Harmohinder knew that her love rival would be in her house. She would be alone, so she drove there. She hated the fact that Sana was carrying her lover's child. She then got a knife and put it into Sana's body 42 times out of jealousy and desperation. One of the wounds penetrated deep into the abdomen of Sana. Harmohinder denied the murder at the time. She said Sana told her that she was disappointed. They had a conversation and she left. However, Harmohinder's bare footprints, which were found on the work surface near the open kitchen window, suggested that this was the way she left the otherwise secure house. Now, Sahir's sister Yasmin then went to the house after Sana did not answer any phone calls from her mother or husband. She said the first thought when discovering Sana's body was that she did this to herself. She was under the impression the house was locked, and seeing her alone made her think she did it to herself. But she was aware, the sister was aware of her brother's relationship with Harmohinder and that she was more than a friend. In the trial, Sahir gave evidence to court about his relationship with Harmohinder and how he tried to explain, look, it's doomed, we're done. And to the prosecution, it was pretty clear that she, Harmohinder, armed herself with a knife to eliminate her love rival. When she finished the murder, she called one of her friends and she said, well, I went over there, I told her to stop this, to break off with her husband, and I left. While there, she told her, I've been deceived by your husband, but now I know he's going to be a father. And as she left, she called her friend and spent 17 minutes on the phone telling her how the confrontation had gone. She told her on the phone, I feel bad about leaving her in an upset condition. Just an hour or two later, Harmohinder claimed to have been told in a phone call that Sana had been found dead in her home. It was said Harmohinder was distraught that her visit might have been the trigger that caused the teenager to harm herself, as that was Harmohinder's explanation on how Sana died. The friend said that in calls she received in quick succession earlier, Harmohinder sounded composed, calm, and quite normal. Also, in the trial, a mobile phone expert told the court following an investigation that her movements were tracked by communications, and when Harmohinder made a series of phone calls as she drove from Birmingham to Sana's home, it was revealed that a phone call made by her placed her in Birmingham at 11:30 in the morning. But further calls placed her in Manchester with Sana's houses by 1 p.m. and she was still there by 2 p.m. And it was at 2:41 where she was monitored leaving the city to head home. So, with this evidence, Harmohinder was jailed in 2007 for the murder of Sana. But recently there had been some fresh analysis. The new data from the mobile phones suggests someone used or accessed Sana's phone after Harmohinder had left the home. She then lodged an appeal. This appeal was rejected in 2020. She was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 14 years. Now, how these two stories tie up is you got Asghar and you have Syed, right? Both of them in England, both of them married girls back home, both of them treated him like shit. In the case of Asghar, his family too. But again, they looked at both these women as lower than them. Syed wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted to have his fun on the side, but once he was over his fun, once he was done with that and got over it, he wanted to ensure his home life was secure. You understand? Family, kids, religion, whatever. And as for Asghar, I don't even know why he married her. There was no economic benefit. Maybe sexual and kids, who knows? Life in prison for Harmohinder, I get. She was jealous. I understand her pain, but what she did was not right. You can't do that. I also blame Syed for this. I think he should have had some form of punishment. I don't know. Do you think he should have? Wow. Comment. Tell me what you think.